Today's sponsor is absolutely nobody. What up, y'all? Today I'm going to be ranking Ninjago seasons on a tier list. If you're unfamiliar, S is the best, F is the worst. You always see Ninjago fans debating or ranking seasons because each season is usually its own disconnected thing. Most of the time, the styles, character arcs, and stories start and end within the same season. Sometimes characters are written differently between them. Each one is kind of its own thing for the most part. By the way, if I sound sick, it's because, well, I'm sick. I got sick like twice this month, but today I really want to make this video, so I don't care. I'm just going to power through. So yeah, here's my ranking. First is the pilots, which will go in A tier. I love the aesthetic, this like orange and purple, Asian, half fantasy kind of vibe. Kai was a fun protagonist. This is a great genesis to the show. Perfect introduction to the characters, and it doesn't get as grandiose as future seasons, so the ceiling is a little bit lower, but for what it is, the 2 test episodes, it's pretty enjoyable. My main criticisms with this season have to do with the end. Like, toward the end of the second episode, things get kind of weird. Like, they're able to just go and get all the dragons within like a minute, and their uniforms change to the dragon ones for like no reason. Sensei Wu makes some anime character type decisions, and the ninja don't even help him defeat Samakai. They just stand around like, this is Sensei's fight. Like it was some profound thing or something. And then Garmadon somehow channels powers through the weapons to open a portal, and for whatever reason doesn't even bother to take them with him, even though that's like his main goal here. Wu's voice lines also get kind of off as well.
Father would not want you to do this, brother.
So yeah, very enjoyable, but toward the end of the second episode it starts falling apart, but still good enough for what it is. It's not nostalgia, this is probably the best season of the show, top of S tier. I'll try to get through this whole thing without glazing up a storm. The writing is perfect. Each character has their own arc to overcome, and all the arcs are well written. Kai's is ego, Jay's is confidence, Cole's is acceptance, and Zane's is finding his purpose. Extremely well-balanced allocation of time distributed to all the characters, not just the 4 ninja. The plots move really fast, but they don't rush or disrupt each other either. Nia's arc is that at the beginning of the season, she's shoved off to the side, but she ends up proving that she can go toe-to-toe with all the ninja despite having no powers by being the samurai. It's like the girl power thing done right, and it also provides a mystery in the middle of the story of who the samurai is. Every moment is completely relevant, zero filler, and I like that. Call me a jingling keys connoisseur, but I like that Star Wars A New Hope type pacing. The villains have reasonable motives, and all the different types of snakes balance out well to the ninja and their elemental powers. Wu gives realistic life lessons that are applicable to the real world. While the slow burn plots take their time in the background, like Lloyd accepting that he's going to have to fight Garmadon, there's so much happening so quickly. And I think my favorite thing about Season 1 upon rewatch is Garmadon. He actually helps the ninja. He proves that the love for his son triumphs over the evil in his veins, adding layers of depth to his character, and he kills the very thing that made him evil in the first place because he would rather rule the world himself than it, like a badass. The Devourer's defeat required sacrifice. Kai also stood out to me in this season as badass, by the way. My only complaints are that the golden weapons instantly being able to turn into vehicles after Wu tells them about it. It's kind of forced in, but you know, they got Lego sets to sell, understandable. It's not the most important plot point anyway. Lloyd coming to good should have been a little bit more drawn out, and the fights are not nearly as good as they'll get later. I still think the arcs here are deeper than they present themselves to be, and the writing here is about at its best. Listen, I have great nostalgia for this season, but it's pretty bad. The Mega Weapon arc is dumb filler, Garmadon's wishes are stupid. The best episode here was the one where they go back in time, but even then it's very flawed because why is Lloyd still aged up if the Mega Weapon that caused that all to happen suddenly didn't exist? It's really dumb. Misako's also a horribly written character, just exposition and plot convenience, yet only mentions things at like the least convenient times. She abandoned Lloyd to study the prophecy and didn't even tell anybody that he could be the Green Ninja. Nice. And her kind of getting with Wu is super weird. Like, imagine being Lloyd and seeing your uncle and mom holding hands and being kind of, ugh. I will say, when they are on the Dark Island, it's actually pretty good. There's a lot of deep, intense moments. The Temple of Light was epic, and almost every bit on the Dark Island is really good. But then they get off the Dark Island again when they return to Ninjago, and the final battle is super campy. Especially the dialogue, like, "I've come here to fight you, where there's light there'll always be shadow," and then Lloyd says, "Unless my light is bright enough," and he basically just outshines the Overlord to death, like, come on. Also, the Overlord possessing Garmadon ruins the whole dynamic of Lloyd and his dad having to come to terms with fighting each other. The reason behind these family member versus family member plots is the emotional conflict brewing, making it more challenging for the characters. With the Overlord, it's basically just good versus the utter embodiment of evil. And to its credit, the scene where Lloyd tries to get his dad to fight the Overlord's control is a great one of the best in the whole show. And something else worth mentioning is that the music score for Season 2, whew, it goes hard. It's better than any in the whole show. Perfectly dramatic music. So yeah, amazing music, good when they're on the island, everything else is kind of lacking. Not to mention they had some of the coolest costumes of the show for like half that season. So Season 2, Legacy of the Green Ninja goes on C tier. Jump up, kick back, whip around and spin. I used to dislike Rebooted as a kid, and to be fair, I still do have some of the same problems with it. The love triangle did nearly permanent damage to the franchise. Not only was it poorly done with Nia being influenced by a damn computer, but they shove it in your face like every 5 seconds, like even during Zane's death. They show you it, and the Overlord returning as a virus is lame. Everything else, though, I find myself enjoying upon rewatch. Pixel is a very well-written character. In fact, she's probably the most well-written and consistent in the series, if I'm being honest. Her romance with Zane is actually kind of cute. Pythor's return was done brilliantly. The first episode stood out to me and felt like it kind of tried to be a sci-fi thriller. This season pushes the boundaries of Ninjago, expanding it from space to the Digiverse, and sacrificing Lloyd's gold power to give the ninja pure elemental powers was a great move for the show. The style and aesthetic worked really well here. Zane's sacrifice is actually so powerful and emotional. I still get chills whenever I watch it. The plot with Lloyd and Sensei Garmadon was fun. I liked seeing this new side of Garmadon. And the snakes having their own prophecies and lore with like the whole Gold Master thing. Oh, it all just worked out so well. Overall, a very fun and enjoyable season. Honestly, if it wasn't for the love triangle and a few other minor flaws, I'd consider putting this on S tier, but I just can't really get past it, so it's going to go on A tier. But you know what does go on S tier? Tournament of Elements. Pretty much everything about this season just rocks. The fight scenes here were actually getting kind of good, like Kai versus Karloff. Having Kai experience his jealousy over not being the Green Ninja again added a layer of depth to his character that I find to be realistic. You know, it's not like he just, "Oh, I'm not the Green Ninja, totally forgot about this prophecy," and thus his ego is just forever killed. No, it was dormant, and it came back here in a way that I found to be really deep. And this season did what it could to fix the love triangle. I'd argue it didn't fully succeed, but it repaired as much of it as it could. Sensei Garmadon was a really great character here, really stood out to me. I love that the lore that they used for Chen and everything intertwines with previously established lore like the Serpentine War. It feels well connected and consistent. Zane's plot of questioning if he's the White Ninja was done so nicely, the conclusion works so well. It reminds me of what they did with, Shadow the Hedgehog in Sonic Heroes. Skylar was also a great character. I like the Elemental Masters in general. Chen and Klaus were fun villains. Garmadon's sacrifice is also emotional and powerful at the end. What also stood out to me, just like the last season, is the first episode here. The drama and gravity of the situation is done so perfectly for a kids show. The looming mystery feel throughout is so tense every time I watch. The only things I don't really like about the season are the Elemental Masters all getting dragons right after hearing, basically, face your fears. Again, they got Lego sets to sell, blah blah blah, whatever. The love triangle thing with Wu and Misako and Garmadon also wasn't great, but at least it was barely there. So yeah, overall, this season fucks. I love it. Oh boy, I can already feel the rampant typing about to take place in my comments because I got a hot take here. Possession is seen as top tier by many. For me, I'm putting it in B tier. Hear me out before typing that essay. It's still good. B tier is still up there. Moro was probably the best villain up to that point, other than maybe Garmadon. I love the dark, ghostly style. Ronin shifted the dynamics by being a force of chaotic neutral, and the last few episodes of the first Spinjitzu Master's Tomb were outstanding. Moro's sacrifice with Wu was perfect, and Wu was also drippin'. I get it. There's a lot to like, but Plenty of episodes toward the beginning were slow, and I thought the arc in Season 1 of Nia becoming the samurai was perfect. Instead, they just went in this new direction of making her the water ninja so that they can combat the ghosts by the end of the season. And it feels like an executive decision to appeal to girls by having her thrown into the main team as like the token female ninja, rather than the samurai just existing as her own thing. But that's just speculation. It's just that it was also sudden and out of nowhere. Like, we waited until the very last zeptosecond to say, oh, you might have water powers, when her Spinjitzu in the past was fiery. This all just doesn't really work. You know, we learned later in the show that wind and water are elements of Wojira that were here in this world before the first Spinjitzu master came in. I just wish they highlighted that more and made that the reason why Moro schools the ninja rather than the writers just taking away their powers. And that could also be why Wu thinks Moro could be the Green Ninja, and why it takes long to figure out that Nia has water powers, because those two elements, wind and water, would be more complicated since they didn't come from Sensei Wu's father, so he doesn't really know as much about them. And that would explain all sorts of things like why Nia didn't have a golden weapon, or why she's not, you know, considered part of the main four, like in the Temple of Light and all that crap. It could have been so easy, but you know, hindsight is 20/20, whatever. Ronin got basically no introduction. The Writers of Destiny thing was kind of stupid, especially when the writers can be easily manipulated, and that causes some problems in the lore. They fix it in Dragon's Rising by basically saying that the writers influenced Destiny rather than create it, but still, it didn't really work at the time. The Preeminent being a creature and a realm at the same time has so much wrong with it, and I don't really care about the other ghost villains beside Moro, like the goons were extremely forgettable. Also, Moro has no real reason to release the Preeminent. Like, his vendetta should have been more personal with Wu or Destiny. His backstory was good, but it felt like a poor motive for wanting to curse the whole world or whatever. Like, every villain up to that point was just take over Ninjago or destroy Ninjago, and even with Chen, it was getting a bit played. Here, it just doesn't really make sense. And then the future visions of the ninja seen in the tomb just doesn't really work out given the animation change that happened later. So while there's a lot to enjoy here, like Kai really stood out to me, it just wasn't my favorite. It gets a B. And speaking of B tier, we got Skybound. I can see some issues with it, like some of the wishes being stupid, the love plot with Nia and Jay being poor, and there's plenty of filler moments. Overall though, I mean, I kind of like it. Nanakon's backstory of bringing his homeland to the realm that destroyed his, and not just take over the world, was really new and refreshing. Jay was a fun main character. I like the villains and style of this season, and this is a really hot take, but I love the ending. Instead of just we defeated the bad guy and Ninjago is safe, it does something much more creative and fun by making it not happen. I don't know how Nia and Jay both remember the whole thing, but it's cute enough. My main problem with this season is Nanakon's power balance, or lack thereof. Like, he can teleport Kai to a faraway island, but then he can't do like the most basic, simple things later. His power's not really well balanced very consistently, but other than that, it's fun enough to watch. I'm putting it just above Possession. To the left of something ranks it as above that thing, whereas closer to the tier means better. Skybound did plenty of things that I found to be unique, like the wishing dynamic, the ending, and the villain's motives being restoration rather than destruction, so this gets a good grade for me. So while making this video, I forgot that Day of the Departed even existed, and I had to go add it back. Whoops. I'm putting it at C tier. When I watched it recently, I found the dialogue and animation to be a bit choppy. Sensei Yang in that plot was cool, it's a fun enough watch. I love what they did with Moro, and I like the villains returning, but it's pretty forgettable, and the only thing it really changes is that Cole went back to being a full human instead of a ghost. Probably should have been a season, but for a Halloween special, it's decent, so it goes on C tier right under Legacy of the Green Ninja. Yeah, I don't really need to say much. Everything I can say about this season has already been said. F tier for me and pretty much the rest of the fan base. Poor animation, inconsistent time shenanigans, not even fun, stupid time shenanigans, just stupid. This season was boring, loaded with filler, and terrible plot points all around. Toward the end of the season, the timeline changes so that Zane never really existed because technology didn't, but somehow the characters are there and able to remember Zane having existed. They all go to some faraway place that's suddenly in the middle of the city. And with Rei and Mia, one of the Time Twins who is powerless was able to enslave two elemental masters who are surrounded by weapons because he has a sword. and they've just been slaves for like 15, 20 years. Like, what the actual heck is this? This is like one of the worst things ever, because the looming mystery of Kai and Nia's parents was around since the beginning of the show, and it was so interesting, and they could have done so many cool things with it. And the Serpentine War was suddenly 40 years ago, but Wu and Garmadon were like super young during it. The Time Twins were kind of boring. Zane dramatically gets knocked out again, as if we've never seen that before. The attire of the ninja and the season intro were good, and I kind of like them using Eggs of the Great Devourer. I mean, I hate when shows just add new all the time and produce so many new things that you stop caring. If the Vermilion Warriors were made of new snakes found in some other random place, I would give less of a reason to care about them, but, you know, them being from the Devourer is kind of neat, I guess. Yeah, this season just sucks, though. This season pulled off what a lot of Ninjago fans call the impossibly good plot. Season 8 was supposed to be a continuation of Hands of Time, since it left some cliffhangers, but the studio was told to change the animation styles to fit the movie, bring back Garmadon, despite him having a powerful sacrifice, and go off of that. So they had to revive Garmadon, figure out how to close the open ends left from the last season, they had to change the animation to fit the movie, which just flopped, and they were coming out of the worst season to date. But somehow the execution was so phenomenal and incredible that it's up there on S tier right behind Rise of Snakes. Absolutely amazing. This felt like what the Ninjago movie should have been. This season locked the heck in and took itself way more seriously. The plot was perfectly written, the fights were way improved to some of the best that I've ever seen in animation, the action sequences were absolutely flawless, Harumi was the most brilliant twist villain, and she doesn't come around like Skylar, she actually stays evil, and she has so much depth to her. And so does Lloyd, he's got a lot of depth now. Before this season, Lloyd was kind of just plain and boring. Like, after they aged him up with the potion in season 2, he just felt like the standard good guy. And here, he's extremely relatable, and he's got some charm. He feels like a young dude just trying his best to make some mistakes, but has a good heart and lots of emotions. He's a lot more modest. When Garmadon comes back, he's not the vulnerable, soft character that he once was. He's brutal and evil, he's got like aura, and he's a very badass and menacing, genuinely intimidating villain. The flow of the story just keeps you on edge the whole time. It's such great writing too, I just can't stress that enough. Like how Harumi was killed by the Devourer and wants to torment Lloyd with the evil side of his father, something that he grappled with in childhood, to take revenge on him for releasing the Devourer, causing losses that she grappled with in her childhood. Lloyd having to fight this monster that just isn't even the same character as his father is so dramatic because he still loves his dad, who has zero love for him, and this is a new challenge that, you know, has never been done before, because Garmadon used to have vulnerability. I also enjoyed the other villains, like Mr. E, Ultraviolet, and Kilo. By the end, Lloyd is like utterly defeated and alone, not just some battle that he lost and he'll win in the next episode. Like, this was breaking him down physically and mentally. He was never truly challenged until that point. He always came out on top by the next episode as the good guy. This time, he goes straight to the bottom. Like, this girl that he grew to like betrayed and abandoned him, and his dad is back, but it's just his evil side. He's powerless. The other ninja destined to protect him are gone. His father wins in ruling Ninjago, and he doesn't even have the wisdom of Sensei Wu. He has literally nothing. This is the perfect way to break him down so that they can rebuild him in the next season. I will say, though, this does have some minor flaws. Zane does get knocked out again, as if we've never seen that before, and this is the turning point for Kai. Like, Kai was my favorite character from before this season, and from this season onward, he's like the worst character. Like, absolute character assassination here. We traded good Kai for good Lloyd. His design change looks really weird, his face looks dopey, but what matters more is that he's no longer stoic, hot-headed, and badass. From here onward, he's basically just a less funny Jay. Like, he used to be at the front lines at every time, but now this season is like, I don't know about giving my power to Lloyd when Lloyd was like dying. Like, he was the one who made the decision to give the golden weapons to Garmadon at the end of season 1. He was always the first to act and the last to give up, and from here on out, he does like nothing important. Also, some of the Oni and Dragon Lore doesn't fully make sense. Like, they just bring back Garmadon's Oni side, but he didn't have 4 arms and black skin because he was an Oni. He got it from, like, the Realm of Madness and by being struck by lightning and the Devourer's Venom. Unless those things are all connected to the Oni, but that wasn't exactly explained. So, rather than bringing back the Oni side, it felt like they were just warping time and space to conveniently bring back someone who is and isn't Garmadon so that they could shoehorn him into the season. Look, all I'm saying is that it could have been explained a little bit better. And the last flaw is that they have a character named Mr. E, as in it was supposed to be a mystery, but they never revealed who it was. And apparently it was supposed to be Echo Zane, but part of the way through the development, they remembered that Skybound, the season that introduced him, erased itself, so they had to cut out a cool moment where he was going to take off his helmet and reveal himself as Echo Zane, because it wouldn't really make sense. Which he is still Echo Zane in my headcanon, but what I'm trying to say is that it's a mystery that goes nowhere. But those are all just small details. Overall, I don't know how to accurately explain how good this season is without just saying it was more deep, more dramatic, extra cinematic, pulled off an impossibly good story, and the fight scenes are absolutely incredible. S tier. So Hunted pretty much meets the same quality as the last season. This was the perfect revival, set up by the perfect downfall, a flawless sequel season. Lloyd starts with nothing, and through evolving emotionally and recovering physically, he's finally ready for the big final fight. And they didn't really pull any last minute punches here like, actually, Lloyd is gonna fight the embodiment of evil instead, like in season 2. He finally faces off against his father, and how does he win? He fights without fighting, employing a tactic that his father taught him back in season 3. It's so poetic that he's fighting the evil side of his father that, his dad always hated, by using a style taught to him by the good side. And it had been said since last season that it's the fight that fuels him, so this being the thing that dwindles Garmadon's power works so well. And for Garmadon losing his power to be the moment that Lloyd gains back his, oh my, the writing is just top tier. And we can't forget Harumi's sacrifice. Like, she brought back Garmadon to validate her evil, but was finally faced with a mirror, realizing that she was wrong. Like, wrong in all her ways to let evil consume her. And she realizes that she doesn't want that evil validated when really faced with a similar situation to hers. But there's nothing that she can do because the weight of that evil crushes her to death, literally, as soon as she tries to relinquish it. Like, there's no happy ending for her, and it's so sad, it's so dramatic, just, So you might be wondering why this is ranked under Sons of Garmadon and Tournament of Elements. Hunted is about 60-40, with 60% of the plot being with the ninja on the Dragon Island in the first realm, and 40% of the plot being Lloyd's epic recovery. While Lloyd's recovery arc was done without flaw, I didn't find myself enjoying the dragon place that much. Like, I found Iron Baron to be generic. The Ninja Raising Wu is really fun, but like, they're captured way too many times. I mean, the season is called Hunted, to be fair. It's still a good plot in contrast, but overall it's just not nearly as enjoyable to me as what's happening in Ninjago City, and unfortunately, that was probably the slight majority of the season. Not necessarily bad, just a little bit less enjoyable. If I was ranking just the first realm parts, it would be a B tier season, but this still goes on S tier because of how good the rest of it was. Perfect sequel. Seasons 8 and 9 felt like everything that Season 2 so desperately wanted to be, but they don't pull any punches here, with Lloyd suddenly outshining Garmadon to death. His victory here feels earned. Like, beforehand, he was just chosen as the Green Ninja by fate or destiny to suddenly blast the Overlord from existence. Here, it actually feels like he's hit rock bottom and had to recover from the ground up to prove himself. And by the end, you're like, holy shit, that's the fucking Green Ninja right there. That's my go. It's so earned. And there's also good setup at the end here for the last season in the Oni trilogy. And I wonder what that last season will bring. Yeah, sorry, this didn't bring much. March of the Oni is D tier. It should have been a whole season instead of 4 episodes. Too much nostalgia crap because it thought it was going to be the end of the show. The dream with the first Spinjitzu master tried to be deeper than it actually was. 2 fake out deaths that were obvious. You couldn't even tell what Omega, the Oni King, was even saying half the time. Garmadon's Oni form was laughably bad. Overall, less than mediocre. Garmadon is still himself, which is really good. There's good fights. The Oni are kind of interesting. And like when Garmadon's powering up by attacking the ninja, that's probably the best scene of this quote-unquote season, but yeah, not much to offer other than just some nostalgia boner stuff. Like, it was really stupid when Kai started remaking the golden weapons. That was so lame, but D tier is the perfect spot for this. Not terrible, but a very weak ending to the Oni trilogy. I'm going to be talking about 11 Secrets of Forbidden Spinjitzu as the Fire chapter and Ice chapter, like differently, because my opinions on them are very different. So let's start with the Fire chapter. I'm just going to hit you with the cold water here, putting out the fire in the Fire chapter, because this season super sucks. It wasn't enough that Kai suffered some character assassination, but now Wu suffers it as well. He goes from being wise and charming to some cranky, boring character who's just not fun anymore. This whole Asphera thing happens because he insists the ninja do something for no reason. Kai loses his powers and just gives up. Kai, Mr. It's not about the size of the ninja in the fight, but the size of the fight in the ninja. Old Kai would have come in and said some crap about how true power comes from within or whatever, but nope, here he just gives up. The fight scenes are improved, but damn. This season's like the worst in the show. Lots of filler too. Goes on F tier below Hands of Time. Not to mention the villain here seems to have a boner for saying revenge. It taints Clutch powers, it's boring, it focuses too much on the goofy humor. I can't really think of any redeeming qualities to this other than the fight scenes. Like, Forbidden Spinjitzu animation looks cool, fight scenes... yeah, I don't know. Also, 10-minute episodes feel like brain rot. Now, while I hated the fire chapter, I found myself thoroughly enjoying the ice chapter for some reason. I'm not usually as into the whole other worlds that the ninja spend time in. Like, you guys know I wasn't a huge fan of the first realm in Season 9, but I feel like this one was done really well. There were all kinds of mythical creatures, some good, some bad, some super interesting, and it was fun to watch everything play out. Cole suddenly having grief about losing the tea came out of nowhere, the way time works between realms doesn't fully make sense, and Lloyd and Zane should have had a much better fight at the end. Zane seems to feel no guilt for being the Ice Emperor and carrying out such evil acts. And the preeminent episode was useless. Even though it's got plenty of flaws, it's still a fun watch. Akita was an awesome character and I wish we saw more of her throughout the show. Its whole new world feel really captured my attention more than almost any time it was previously tried. I'm gonna put this on B tier, just above Possession and below Skybound. Prime Empire is the definition of mid. About as mediocre as it gets. Good firm C tier. About equal to Legacy of the Green Ninja, but I'll just put it right behind. Watching the whole we're in a video game thing has its fun times, it just didn't really feel like Ninjago. Unagami being some kid was such a weird conclusion. Somehow Zane and Wu couldn't even defeat some low-level goons. I really did like Detective Zane though, that was fun. The story with Okino and the other AIs being sentient was cute, but like, Unagami could have like removed the ninja or killed them and, you know, at any point. But he just didn't. I don't really know why. That was kind of weird. Prime Empire has its ups and downs. It's fun enough to not be bad. However, if it was erased, nothing would change from the main show. It's what I call aggressively mid. I enjoyed Master of the Mountain a lot more than I thought I might. It took long enough to finally get a Cole season, and I like this one. I like Cole's connection to the Earth as like an Earth elemental being explored, along with his backstory like his mom dying. The Geckos and Munts were really funny, and the plot about them being divided and the ninja trying to bring them together was kinda cute. Vangelis being the twist villain was unnecessary though. And one big problem is the fact that the ninja are powerless again because of the Venge Stone. Like, the writers keep having trouble balancing out the ninja having elemental powers, so instead of working on that, they keep stripping all the powers away. They only actually got their powers at the end of Rebooted, so they had them during seasons 4, 6, 7, 8, Lloyd doesn't really have his until the end of 9, but the rest of them do. During that season, Kai loses his in the first half of 11, Nia's loses hers in the second half, and no one could use their powers in season 12. Now, again, they can't use their powers other than Cole, so that kind of bothers me, but I'm still going to put it at the bottom of A tier. It's still a rock-solid season. To be honest, I don't remember much about the island. It foreshadows one thing that the ninja go to do during Seabound and the existence of Wojira, and they had Ronin. At least they remember Ronin exists. From what I remember, there were some good funny moments, but it's just so forgettable for me, even more than Day of the Departed. I think D tier is a good spot for it, right under March of the Oni. Seabound is definitely the best Wild Brain era Ninjago season. It's very well written, the ending sacrifice was so tragic, the flow of the story was really good, and it fixed the mess that Hands of Time left behind with the plot about Kai and Nia's parents. I love the animation and visuals here. Benthamar is a really great character, and Nia's arc of learning that it's okay to ask for help is so well done here. What stood out to me most about this season though was the villain, Kalmar. He was so intimidating, just a flat out monster. People compare him to Pythor a lot, but I think he's different and works well in his own way. Pythor had motive to hurt the ninja, and he was kind of cartoonish. He at least had some amount of empathy. Kalmar, on the other hand, is very serious, very evil, and has zero reason for doing what he does and zero empathy. He literally just murks his own dad on the spot because his dad didn't want him to kill all humans, but he doesn't want to listen at all. He's so evil and brutal that it's actually crazy. Definitely a top tier villain who really made the season stand out for me. This one goes at the top of A tier. They could have done more with some of the other characters, and I didn't really like the costumes, but this is the best Wild Brain season for sure. I can see why Crystallized is so controversial, but to me, I'm putting it straight on S tier because, yeah, no, I'm just kidding. This season sucks a lot. First, I'll explain what I like about it. It's got the best visuals, aesthetic, and fights throughout the whole show. Wu versus the Crystal Council and him fighting the Overlord went really hard, so did Lloyd getting possessed by the crystals. Zane had a nice little arc of learning that all emotions are okay, including the bad ones. Garmadon also had good redemption, and thank God they fixed his Oni form this season. I actually like the Overlord coming back just because his importance was way over exaggerated in season 2. Like, they acted like his fight with Lloyd would be like the fight to end all fights, but it just wasn't. Like, he dies, comes back as a virus, and dies again, and then he's immediately forgotten about, so him coming back was kind of cool. And that's enough just to keep it out of F tier, but oh my, there is so much wrong with this season. Where do I even start? Harumi's death was so poetic, and her revival as a villain made no sense. Like, it totally contradicted the ending that she had. She turned on the Overlord for having created the Devourer, and that's the reason why she wanted to bring back Garmadon in the first place. Yet she allies with Pythor, the guy who actually releases the Great Devourer. Were the writers drinking stupid juice here? Like, damn. The main 4 ninja did almost nothing throughout the whole season. Nia's sacrifice, said to be permanent, is reversed within the first few episodes. If it was reversed by the end of the season, it might have at least felt earned. They introduce all these weird new characters that don't add anything, like Sally and Hound Dog McBrog. At least Sally helped Zane learn that all emotions are okay. Hound Dog McBrog was useless. The final season is also not the time to be rampantly adding in all these OCs. They're just filler characters in the middle of multiple filler episodes in the desert. Lloyd keeps acting stupid around Harumi, even forgiving her by the end of the season. She's with us, like, absolutely abysmal. Sends a bad message about forgiving your abusers. Meanwhile, he ignored Garmadon, who actually did seem like he was trying to do good. There are countless ass pulls at the end. Wu is mad at the ninja for trying to save Nia because they did so through illegal means, as if Wu's never done anything illegal before. Jay and Kai get in a little squabble that could have been something much more, but it was in such a corny way. Kai seems to barely feel any grief for Nia. When Nia comes back, she starts relearning to be Samurai X because she feels useless without powers. Just another affront to her arc in season 1, and then gains powers at the end for no reason. The Overlord coming back was nice, though it was explained by basically evil brewing draws his presence. Does this mean he can actually never die and that the fight just perpetually carries on forever? Because that's weird. I mean, it makes the conclusion super dissatisfying. Also, the Overlord was revived in an Oni temple and looks like an Oni, so he must be an Oni, right? But in season 2, he turned into a dragon when those two are opposite forces. Like, what the heck? I don't know what the deal with that is. Lloyd's Oni form was really cool for the 2 seconds that it was on screen. When the ninja were jumping up, kicking back, whipping around, and spinning to unlock dragon form or whatever, it was so stupid, I laughed my ass off. And then when Kai tries to suddenly ask out Skylar for no reason, like, ugh, why? So many horrible things about this season, and while it has just enough to keep itself out of F tier, it will sit comfortably at the bottom of D tier. This video is already 30 minutes, and I originally didn't really want to rank the Dragon's Rising seasons, just because there's only 2 of them out right now, and I already have a video going over my thoughts about the entirety of Dragon's Rising in depth, but I guess I'll just quickly add them because why not? Dragon's Rising Season 1, S tier, right under Sons of Garmadon, pretty much a flawless continuation that does a perfect job at keeping the story going while expanding the world, universe, its characters, and telling new stories. It's even started to fix old problems, like retroactively giving Kai grief for Nia's merging with the sea, fixing the Riders of Destiny thing, dragons being given narrative significance instead of being mostly symbolic, and it gives us a way better arc of Lloyd becoming the sensei. Absolutely amazing. It doesn't beat Sons of Garmadon just because the weight of emotional depth with Sons of Garmadon reaches a high higher ceiling and there are higher stakes. And like I said, I think Season 1 is a lot deeper than it presents itself to be. But Dragon's Rising Season 1 also hasn't had enough time to really marinate with me, if that makes sense. I might change my mind about it in the future, but overall, the whole Season 1 plot of taking down the Imperium, sort of a fascist regime, was perfectly executed. Season 2 of Dragon's Rising is at the bottom of A tier. While the first half is perfect, Season 2 Part 2 really missed the mark for me. The tournament was just kind of retreading old ground, and Jay's evil arc is off to a lame start. Some of the fights don't really make sense, like who wins against who, and there was a lot less tension and thrill here than the Tournament of Elements. It didn't really try hard enough to be different. And there's a dumb car race scene, like those are just getting annoying. I don't really like them in Ninjago. Good setup for the next season, but yeah, I wasn't impressed with that second half. So that's my tier list. Let me know what you think. If you subscribe, I will give you 5 Lamborghinis or something. I don't know. Comment what kind of videos you want to see in the future, because I've been sick and working a lot. And, you know, the holidays were just around, so I was busy with all that. Yeah, let me know. Alright, laters.